In 1914, a single assassination in Sarajevo triggered a chain reaction that pulled 30 nations into a world war. History keeps reminding us the most consequential events rarely look consequential at first glance. Today we watch 5 dominoes each already falling and trace exactly where they land in your everyday life. One of them started with a 20-mile wide channel you've probably never thought about before today. But by the time we're done, you'll understand why that channel controls the price of almost everything you own. Domino 1. The Strait of Hormuz, the first tile in a chain reaction still working its way through the global economy. 20% of global oil, 17 million barrels per day, one narrow channel, now effectively a war zone. When that channel closes, or even partially closes, every downstream system that depends on it starts to wobble. Oil prices rise, refinery input costs rise, product prices rise, transport costs rise. Everything downstream rises. Your heating bill, your gas pump, your medication, your food packaging, your car parts, all connected to this one strait. Breaking news that could stop this domino mid-fall: Pakistan may have brokered a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. Pakistan's army chief spent the night on the phone between Vice President Vance and Iran's foreign minister. The proposed Islamabad Accord would reopen the strait within 15 to 20 days if both sides hold the agreement. If it works, the domino chain pauses. If it fails, every tile downstream accelerates. We will know very soon. For now, 27 attacks on commercial ships since March 1st. Critical threat level still active across the Gulf. 8 ships transited the past 24 hours against a normal baseline of over 100 per day before the conflict. Traffic down 95% for most of March. That is not a dip, that is a near-complete stoppage of a global artery. While talks proceed, drones kept flying. 4 energy facilities hit across Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE in 72 hours. Each burning facility is another tile falling more supply off the market. More price pressure building downstream. 13 ships transited April 2nd, 8 by April 4th. Each drop is another nudge to the domino chain. A Chinese bulk carrier briefly ran aground in the Suez Canal this week, 4 hours of panic before it was refloated. 4 hours! But it showed how close a second major choke point is to becoming the next tile in this chain. Then the president posted an Easter Sunday ultimatum: open the strait or face bombs on bridges and power plants. A Tuesday, 8 p.m. deadline, diplomatic tiles being set up rapidly, some falling toward resolution, some toward escalation. The UAE pushed hard for Hormuz to be guaranteed in any peace deal. They have billions in cargo sitting idle offshore. 2 Qatar LNG tankers approached Hormuz this week and turned back. 40-plus days of trapped gas going nowhere. Every day those ships sit still. The energy deficit in Europe and Asia grows larger, and prices rise to fill the gap. One tanker made it through the Ocean Thunderer after Iraq formally requested Iran's permission to move Iraqi oil. A sovereign nation asking permission to sell its own resources, that is what a closed domino looks like in practice. Iran also claimed strikes on 2 ships, an MSC container ship and the Qingdao Star, formerly an Israeli-owned vessel. The targeting logic is thin in both cases, but each strike adds to the insurance cost domino hitting every shipper. And here is the hidden tile most people miss: Iran's own merchant fleet is booming while it holds the strait closed. Bandar Abbas averaging 20-plus cargo movements daily, sanctions lifted on Iran, oil flowing to India and China. The country that knocked over the first domino is sitting safely behind it, watching the rest of the chain fall for them. Domino 2, the Black Sea, where a separate chain reaction has been running in parallel the entire time. While global attention fixed on Hormuz, the Russia-Ukraine maritime conflict kept accelerating its own cascade. April 5th, a Russian wheat-carrying vessel sank in the Sea of Azov after Ukrainian drone strikes. Crew casualties reported. Wheat ship sunk leads to global wheat supply shrinks, leads to benchmark prices rise, leads to bread and grain products cost more everywhere. That is the domino chain from a single vessel sinking in a sea most Americans cannot locate on a map. Ukraine then struck multiple Russian energy facilities over the weekend: Novorossiysk, Lukoil refinery, Primorsk port. Then struck a Russian naval frigate in the same port during the same operation. Economic and military targets together. Russian oil terminal burns leads to Russian export capacity drops. Leads to global oil supply tightens. Leads to energy prices rise worldwide. Each strike Ukraine lands is another tile in a chain designed to drain $500 million daily from Moscow. But the chain runs past Russia through global energy markets and eventually reaches your monthly utility statement. The Arctic Medegas, a Russian LNG carrier, was struck by unmanned surface vessels in the Mediterranean this week. Two massive hull holes. Refrigeration offline. LNG cargo likely vented. Ship drifting near Malta. Unclaimed. A drifting ghost ship loaded with gas in the Mediterranean. That is a domino still in the air. Shadow Fleet tanker. Flora 1 was detained by Sweden, then released, couldn't prove oil pollution in their jurisdiction. Shadow Fleet ships are their own domino chain, moving sanctioned oil outside every price cap system running today. Now, Russia's LNG math problem and how it connects to what Americans pay for heat in the months ahead. Russia wants to redirect Yamal LNG to Asia, but their main route through Hormuz is closed by the first domino. One domino causing another Hormuz closure forces Russia onto the Arctic route, cutting their delivery capacity by more than half. Russia's 25 Arctic-capable vessels can manage only 120 to 130 voyages per year at max. That is less than half their 2024 export volume. Gap unfilled. Energy markets absorb the deficit with higher prices. So Russia's LNG flows to Europe, the bloc, sanctioning them and promising to cut them off by 2027. Europe buys it at full volume while funding Ukraine to strike Russia's energy infrastructure. Both things are simultaneously true. For American consumers, tight global LNG supply elevates U.S. export prices, which keeps domestic heating costs high. Domino 2 is still falling. The Black Sea chain is nowhere near the end of its cascade. Domino 3 container shipping rates the supply chain tile that connects every other story to your store receipt. Here is the surprising part of this story. The container rate domino has not fully fallen, not yet. The World Container Index sits around $2,267 per 40-foot container this week. A global glut of container ships is acting as a shock absorber, holding the tile upright longer than it should stay standing. Rates peaked at $3,500 in June 2025 during the first U.S.-Iran escalation, then fell back when tensions cooled. Now they're climbing again. Shanghai to New York, $3,434. Shanghai to Genoa, $3,529. Shanghai to Los Angeles, $2,663. Every dollar above baseline is a tile that has already started tipping toward your shopping cart and your checkout total. Shipping carriers tried to accelerate this domino by filing war surcharges on top of already elevated rates. The U.S. Federal Maritime Commission caught that tile mid-fall. FMC Chair Laura DiBella blocked the surcharges cold, showed documented proof that war costs raised your specific operating expenses before charging anything to any shipper. India held the same line. Regulators on 2 continents stopped a corporate surcharge domino from reaching consumers. The Ocean Shipping Reform Act of 2022 is the barrier that caught this tile. It is working exactly as designed. But the glut won't last forever. When demand recovers and spare capacity tightens, the rate domino will fall harder. Any new military escalation could collapse the rate stability in days. One tile touches another and the chain restarts. Domino 4. China versus Panama. A trade war fought inside the Maritime rulebook with port inspection stamps. This domino started with a Hong Kong port operator losing a 30-year lease in a Panamanian court ruling. C.K. Hutchison controlled terminals at both ends of the Panama Canal. Panama took them back through legal process. That tile fell. China's response knocked over Panama's shipping revenue by targeting Panama-flagged vessels in Chinese ports. Chinese port inspectors now find every minor violation on Panama-flagged ships detaining, delaying, fining systematically. Panama is a top 3 global ship registry. Targeting Panama-flagged ships touches a massive share of worldwide vessel traffic. Ships are reflagging to avoid the gauntlet costing Panama registration revenue every week. The harassment continues. Secretary Rubio called it out, China using economic coercion to overturn a sovereign nation's legal ruling. But this domino has a countertile that China may be underestimating. Panama can close the canal to Chinese ships. The U.S. can ramp up inspections on Chinese-built vessels at every American port. Those tiles would cost China enormously. The Panama Canal handles 5% of global seaborne trade and 3% of all U.S. imports annually. if that tile falls fully. The downstream chain adds billions to annual U.S. consumer costs across nearly every product category. The dark fleet ignores the rules entirely. China and Panama are fighting inside the rules, a controlled but live chain. What started as a port lease dispute is now a geopolitical domino with real implications for American import prices. Domino 5, the Pentagon's $65.8 billion naval investment, America's attempt to stop future dominoes. The largest U.S. military shipbuilding request since 1962, Washington's direct response to every chain reaction in these stories. The logic is simple. Stronger naval presence means more protected shipping lanes means fewer dominoes start falling at all. Let's walk through what $65.8 billion actually buys in terms of chain reaction prevention. 2 submarine tenders keeping attack submarines forward deployed. The current fleet is dangerously old and overdue. 1 hospital ship replacing the USNS Mercy and Comfort, both nearly 50 years old, long overdue replacement. 6 fleet oilers without them. The Navy cannot sustain operations long enough to actually deter the bad actors causing these chains. 1 Tago sonar vessel, an Arleigh Burke destroyer, 2 Virginia-class submarines, 1 Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, 1 America-class assault ship, 1 San Antonio transport, 1 FFX frigate, a broad investment in deterrence capability. But here's the chain-stopping purchase that deserves the most attention and will get almost none from major outlets. 5 fireboats. Not missiles, not destroyers. The vessels that stop the domino chain that starts when a warship catches fire in port. The Navy lost the USS Bonhomme Richard in 2020, a $1 billion warship to a pierside fire nobody could stop. Police boats sprayed water from outside. Tugboats tried to help. None of them had fireboat capabilities or trained crews. That entire domino chain fire starts. Wrong equipment responds. $1 billion asset destroyed cost the Navy enormously. A fireboat stops that chain cold. Pumps directly into the ship. Coordinates with shore crews who understand the vessel. A few million to stop a $1 billion chain. That is the highest leverage domino prevention in this entire budget. This budget also chains into the broader economy smaller vessels built in regional yards, spreading contracts nationally. The shipyard capacity domino guaranteed contracts fund workforce expansion, which builds more capacity for future needs. The missing tile, no commercial shipbuilding investment in a $65 billion budget, is a chain left unaddressed. America's Jones Act tanker fleet is aging out a 60-day waiver just issued because domestic oil can't move domestically. That shortage chain, fewer U.S. tankers, leads to less domestic oil movement. Competition leads to higher domestic fuel transport rates, leads to higher gas prices. $65 billion for warships, 0 to interrupt the commercial fleet chain reaction already underway. That gap has consequences. Here is where all 5 domino chains stand as of April 6th and what the next tile could be for each. Domino 1. Hormuz ceasefire deadline passed Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We may already know if this chain paused or accelerated. If the Islamabad Accord holds, oil prices fall. LNG flows. Shipping costs normalize probably within 3 to 4 weeks. If it collapses, oil stays elevated, insurance stays high. Every downstream price keeps climbing and the chain keeps running. Domino 2, Black Sea still falling. Ukraine continues striking Russian energy infrastructure. Grain disruption ongoing. Domino 3, container rates stable but fragile. One escalation anywhere and the rate floor disappears within days. Domino 4, Panama Canal escalating. China squeezing. Countermoves available but not yet deployed by either side. Domino 5, Navy budget just tipped. Contracts being written. Shipyards gearing up. Chain building for the long term. China squeezing Panama. Russia selling to its sanctioners. Iran profiting from the chaos its first domino created. None of these chains are theoretical. Every one of them connects to your grocery bill, your gas, your utility statement. The world's shipping lanes are the most consequential infrastructure you never think about until the dominoes start falling. They're already falling. Subscribe and follow along because the next tile in each of these chains is already in motion.